Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to Season 6 of Made Man, your favorite and most handsome Mad Man podcast, where tonight I just finished watching Season 6, Episode 1, The Doorway, a Part 1. Yes, this time I decided not to watch both episodes of the 2-hour season premiere. Even though Netflix puts them together as one episode, I decided to break these out so that the episodes match 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, 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 so that I'm not off by one number just because that's what Netflix did. I did that last season, and I decided not to do it this season. Also because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to stay awake to watch both parts of this episode. But that's okay. There's a lot to discuss in this episode, The Doorway, Part 1. But before we get started, I just want to say a few things. Thank you, everybody, for subscribing. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been great. I can't believe we made it to Season 6. I can't believe we only have 6 and 7 left. This is crazy. Listen, do you know the best way to find me? It's through Twitter, which is @MadeManPod. Or you can always email me, mademan@fansnotexperts.com. Now, before we get started with the show, I just want to take a little word to hear, or take a moment, I should say, to hear a word from today's sponsor. Wasn't that great? Okay, now, let's get into the action of The Doorway. So this episode starts completely, well, it starts weird. It doesn't, I was going to say it starts in Hawaii, but it doesn't really. It starts with somebody dead, you think, and or somebody dying, having a heart attack, and Megan screaming over them. So my first thought was, that's Don. Don lives a hard lifestyle. He likes it to drink. He likes it to smoke. I'm sure he eats lots of bacon. And he probably had one of those them heart attacks. That's what I thought at the beginning. And then we cut over to Hawaii. Now, when I was a kid, everything I learned from Hawaii was from the Bradys. You go to Hawaii, if you wear this this cursed tiki idol around your neck, you're going to hit your head while you're surfing. You're almost going to have something on a wall fall on you. You're going to have a tarantula crawl on you. And later on, you're going to meet Vincent Price. Those are the things that I assume happen in everyone's Hawaiian trip. Now, it seemed like none of that happened here. They were on vacation. But they were on a work vacation. So Don's there, Megan's there, and the first thing Megan said was, I don't want to get too tan, because, well, it started with a little voiceover, I forget what he said, but Don was reading Inferno, I believe. Was that Dante's Inferno? I mean, he wasn't reading the Dan Brown version. Boom. But Megan said something that was telling. She said, I don't want to get too tan. They may fire me or something like that. I don't want too much tan. And I said, oh, she's got a job. So they don't. What I love about shows like this, smart written shows, is they don't say, hey, Megan, how you doing with that new job? Oh, the job I got on television, on a TV show? Yeah, the one you got on the TV show. How are you doing? I'm doing great. That's how poorly written shows are done. If you watch bad movies or bad shows, and you start hearing them talk to each other in ways that, like, they should already know, but they're saying it specifically so the dumb audience knows. So it's like, listen, man, you're my brother, and no matter what you do as a teacher in 7th grade, you'll always be my brother. I hate stupid writing, and I didn't know it was stupid writing until I remember, I probably talked about this before. Albert Brooks said something about that once. I heard him in an interview bring it up, and ever since then it just jumps out at me. Whereas good writing, like this, she just says something that makes you think, what's she talking about? She must have a show. Now, I don't know how much time has passed, but it is Christmas time. It is the winter. But obviously the commercial she got when she was Snow White or Sleeping Beauty or whatever it was, that obviously people took notice, and people to the point where she got a job. Not a huge TV job, as we learn later, but still a TV job where she gets recognized. So they're in Hawaii, and really they're there, it looks like, to sell for a hotel. Megan's there to get weed, and then so they can have sex on weed, which apparently is exciting. But they also go to a luau, and at the luau, they're with a guy at the table, and he's like, the way he was talking, you could see that it was his hotel, or he was the manager or the owner. I don't know. But Don was there specifically for work, to do research for this hotel, to do ads for them. And Megan, someone came up to her and asked for her autograph and said the character's name. And when she said the character's name, I'm like, what is going on? Oh, wait, she recognizes her from TV. And the way they said it, it seemed like it was a soap opera. That was my guess, a soap opera. And, you know, Don, you could just see, was kind of smiling. He kind of took the whole thing in. Megan was dancing up there with, like, the flirty guy running the luau. But it was, all part of the show. Don was just kind of, it seemed like he was just taking it in. Seeing Megan get recognized, he just had this look like, cool. But really it was about, they're there for work, and Megan, again, getting high, making sweet love to her husband. But at one point, Don ends up downstairs. I don't know if it was just because he's old and needs to fidget, he needs to move. He ends up at the hotel bar, where he runs into a young private who's in the Army. Now, Don was in the Army in Korea. This guy is in Vietnam. He is there to get married. He has this nice Mexican girl. She has no family. And he's like, she thinks, married men live longer because they have someone to fight for. They have reason to live. That's why they ended up getting married so quickly. He's basically getting married in the morning and going back to war in the afternoon, which is, I think that's what he said, which is just freaky. And the guy was drunk, but I thought he was just going to bother Don, but they kind of connected. And they joked, they made a connection because of the lighters. They both had the same lighter, and that's how the kid knew that Don was in the service. And he's like, can you give the bride away? She has no family here. I don't want some hotel employee doing it. So Megan wakes up the next morning, sees Don's not there, kind of moseys over to the balcony, takes notice. Next thing you know, she's out on the beach taking pictures of Don, who is standing in as the witness and is there for the bride, just being part of the wedding, which I thought was, I don't know, I think Don thought he was doing something nice for a fellow soldier. I felt like maybe he just felt like he owed it to this kid. And this was like the first 10 minutes of the show. We're in Hawaii. We're at a luau. We're smoking weed. We're doing sex. We're helping some dude get married. We're sitting at a bar. It is like, what the hell is going on? Now, did Don sleep with those women at the end of the last season? I don't know. What is, how did Megan get this job? I don't know. I was trying to figure out, is this years later? I don't know. I don't think it is. It seems like it isn't. It's still in the 60s. But, it starts there, and then I'm thinking, are we going to do this whole episode in Hawaii? I love saying it. I'm sorry, I love saying it that way. There's a commercial where they say Hawaii, and it just sounds so much cooler than me saying Hawaii. I'm just going to mute my phone. So we cut back to cold and windy New York, and what's the first face we see but Henry Francis's mother? She's there. Sally's there. Sally's, every year she's becoming older, like she's growing up before our eyes. Betty's there, and some other girl's there. Girl I've never seen before. My first thought is this Henry Francis's daughter? Doesn't Henry Francis have a daughter? Doesn't Henry Francis have kids? I'm not crazy, right? from his first marriage? I thought he did. We never hear from them. But they're at the movies, or they're at the Nutcracker is what they're at. And on the way home, Betty gets pulled over because she's an erratic driver. It's snowy. She thought maybe she was speeding. She was being polite to the officer. Henry Francis's mother was being much like, do you know who my son is? He works for Mayor Lindsay, blah, blah, blah. The cop's like, I don't care who you are. I'm trying to keep you from taking you off the road in a shovel. And the mother, who was just so dramatic, she was like, this is just the worst thing ever. And the girl in the back they're giggling. And the girl in the back said, well, my mother's dead. And they're all giggling about it. And I'm like, who is this girl? And you know what? I still don't know who this girl is. There's a side story with this girl. This is just the first episode, so maybe more goes on in the second episode of The Doorway. But there's this side episode with this like moment with this girl who I don't know who she is. And I'm wondering, do I even care who she is? Because she seems to just be Sally's friend who plays the violin, who Bobby seems to have a crush on. And it led to one of the most uncomfortable moments in Mad Men history. But it's also par for the course for crazy person Betty Draper Francis. And I'll get there. But so they get pulled over, and next thing you know, we cut over to the Francis household. It's nice, and the house looks very nice. All's done up for Christmas, and Henry's there with Bobby and Jean. Henry, no matter what you do, those are Don's kids, okay? Bobby, I think it's the same Bobby actor from last year, but he seemed like he didn't grow at all. He seemed like he got smaller. I don't know if that's possible. But all the women show up, and Bobby's like, are you sleeping over? To the other girl. He runs to get the violin. Meanwhile, Sally's like, oh, you're going to tell her what happened? Betty got pulled over. And she says Betty, not my mother. I don't know why Sally would talk like Henry Francis. Also, when she was in the car, Sally's like, I hate cops. Now, I think this is the late 60s, so Sally is trying to be what she sees on TV with the hippie movement. That's just my guess. That's my guess. But so they give this girl, she's going to be going to Juilliard. And that it really impressed Henry Francis's mother. And so Bobby's like, can you play the violin? Gives the violin that they already have. She gets up and she starts playing, playing the fiddle, playing something nice. I don't know. Then we cut over to Don Draper and Megan showing up back at home. It's cold. This is what threw me off. It threw me off a little bit. So, and I rewound it like 3 times to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. Don and Megan come in. They say hi to the doorman. Doorman's like, how you doing? She's like, great. How are you feeling? And when she says that, boom, he collapses. Megan and Don rush over. They're screaming. And I'm like, wait a second. My first thought was, did I catch something? Did I catch a mistake? That's ridiculous, obviously. But we see Megan completely in a different outfit and Don completely in a different outfit. And they're not bundled up for the winter. And they're freaking out. And this guy crumbles up. And meanwhile, this doctor comes over. He's like, get out of the way, get out of the way. Starts giving mouth to mouth and bringing this guy back to life. They're like, come on, come back to life. I can hear you. I think Jonesy was his name. And then we cut right back to the winter time, to what we saw originally. And they're like, I can't believe you're back at work already. So it was like a clever little time jump to, again, show you what happened, not tell you what happened. On another TV show, they'd be like, Jonesy, how are you feeling since your heart attack a week ago? I'm feeling much better. Thankfully, the good doctor brought me back to life. Oh, here's the good doctor now. Blah, 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 blah. But they just kind of showed us, which is what good writing does. I don't know what he had to do with it except bringing the doctor into the story. But other than that, I wasn't quite sure what it did. Maybe it brings mortality to the story. That maybe the doorway and the doorman, some kind of significance there. But after that, and we jump back to to look at this. I'm not going from character to character. And I'm going to tell you a little secret right now. So I'm using the red bar on Netflix to see the little box on the screen, and it's reminding me what I just watched. Isn't that helpful? I don't know if this is a new season 6 thing. I don't know. But I'm kind of looking down going, oh, this is what happens. And then I talk about it. And then I remember it. I'm not watching it again. It's not on my screen. But when you run your mouse over the little red line, it just gives you a little thumbnail of what you were watching. So that's why I'm nailing exactly what happened next. And you know what happened next? Ladies and gentlemen, this is what freaked me out more than, I don't know, more than Betty asking, remember when, like, didn't she ask someone to feed? Oh, no. More than when Henry first rubbed Betty's pregnant belly. More than when Betty bought a chaise lounge just because she wanted to fantasize about Henry. More than when she let Glenn, that's his name, right, take a bit of her hair. This was strange. So Betty gets into bed. She's like, that girl's really good at violin, huh? He goes, look at the smile on your face. You seem, no, that's right. He's reading the newspaper, and she's like, oh, you shouldn't read that. It gets you all stressed. He's like, no, I'm relaxed. No, actually, Betty, I'm relaxed. I'm relaxed tonight. I don't know. I got to work on my Henry Francis. And she's like, well, I bet you are. I saw the way, that violin made you relax. He's like, she's very talented. She's like, isn't she a little young for you? Like, she's barely a year older than Sally. He's like, oh, bets. He's like, yeah, maybe I'll run away with a teen bride. And then she goes, well, why? She's right in the next room. Why don't you go in there and rape her? This is what Betty said with a smile on her face. He's like, what? What are you talking about? She goes, would it make you feel better if we left? I can take Sally. You can go. I could help you. I could hold her down, and you could put a rag in her mouth. I'm like, what the F are you doing, Betty? Betty, you are a crazy person. Now, I think of Pete as a crazy person also. He tries to hide it with his big smile and smirks. And you hide it with your batting your doughy eyes, but you are legit cuckoo bird. And if I was Henry, I'd be like, oh, this is why Dawn, actually, she asked for divorce. I was going to say this is why Dawn divorced you. Not true. But you have to think Henry's like, dear Lord, what have I done? What have I done? Because that was really, really odd. We cut back over to Dawn and Megan back in their apartment. And Megan gets the script in the mail. And she's like, oh, the doorman gave her the script for her show. So we know she's on a show. We know she's being recognized. But she's like, I have, so many lines. She's like, I have like one page of a script here. And I have like so many, 2 lines or something like that. She's like, I shouldn't have gone on vacation. So it seems like she's not a big part of the show, but she has a show. She plays the maid, and she has a couple lines, and she packs for someone. And Dawn's like, seems like he's the one who should worry, because if you're packing for this guy, maybe he's off the show. But she was just upset because apparently, she doesn't have as much lines as she thought she would. And now we go back to, I want to say it's a sweet moment, but I also want to say, why do I care about this? So that girl that was playing the violin, she's hanging out in the kitchen. Betty goes down for a midnight snack, and they share a moment while this girl, who's, 15, sitting there smoking at the kitchen table. Betty has no problem with it, and sits down and tries to give her advice of, well, the girl tells her, I'm not going to Juilliard. And she goes, I can't go to Juilliard. And Betty's like, that's not, don't think like that. And she goes, no, I didn't get in. I'm not good enough. I'm too old already. And Betty's trying to give her advice. And I think she said she could stay with them for a while. I don't know I don't know if this is this girl going to come in and become close to Betty and Sally's going to get jealous? I don't know. And I'm wondering if I care. This is Don Draper's family. That's why I cared about it. Now that it's not Don Draper's family, but when they're not interacting with Don, I don't care as much. Sally with Don and Megan, great. Sally with Betty, Sally's great. So maybe it's just Betty I don't want to deal with, and now this other girl. Like, why do I care about this? I don't know. It must go somewhere, I guess. Maybe this girl is showing Betty, or making Betty think of what she had. I don't know. But it's like this girl doesn't want to go back to regular high school. Sally, she's like, it's too late. Betty's like, you can do 2 years. You don't have to worry about it. She goes, I want to live in the city. But she's like, didn't you do it? She goes, yeah, I lived with a bunch of girls and we ate canned food and it was not great. It was not easy. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't even want to talk about that anymore. I don't know. I don't care. But here's the thing with this year. Not only are we going to get Sterling Cooper Draper Campbell? I didn't actually look at the sign to see if they changed the name. Not only are we going to get that advertising firm, we're actually going to get Peggy's advertising firm, which I don't remember their name either. But you know what? Peggy Olson is still going to be a major part of the show. Thank God. And hopefully this means that she'll eventually end up back where she belongs. But we cut over to... what's her boyfriend's name? I don't remember. But she's still with her same boyfriend. He's a little hippy-dippy now. He's got the long hair. He's got the mustachio. And he's also seems to have the diarrhea. They ate someplace, some vegetarian place. Peggy hates vegetarian. Says, makes her think of Lent. This guy runs into the bathroom, and it's late. It is late at night, and I think it's Christmas Eve. I think. But it's late, and she gets a call in the middle of the night from this dude, and he's pissed because there is a big ad, the big campaign they have for headphones, and their big slogan is "Lend me your ear." And some comedian went on the Tonight Show and made a joke about Vietnam soldiers chopping off the Viet Cong's ears and wearing them in necklaces. So that gives a negative connotation of "lend me your ear," and now they think the ad will just remind people of that and will not buy the headphones. It's a big advertising, catastrophe. And he calls her at just about midnight, and she's like, "We gotta get our boss. I can't remember his friggin' name. Art? No, it's not Art. But we gotta get him. You gotta call him." And she's like, "Oh, she's got to figure something out in the middle of the night." Now, cut back to Don in an elevator, and I'm thinking, "Oh, good, he's going to work. We're finally going to go to work." No, he's not at work. He's in his house elevator, his building elevator. We haven't seen this building elevator, and I feel like all of a sudden we got the doorman, we got the elevator, we got this doctor. In the elevator is the man who saved the doorman's life, good old Doctor something or other. I don't know. I don't remember his name, but he is, I'm assuming, a Jewish doctor because Don said, "Merry Christmas." "Oh, wait, I don't say that to you." He's like, "No, you can say that to my wife." And they just, got to talking about, I don't even remember what they were talking about, but it was like, "Oh, oh, you look great in Hawaii. That's nice." And then the guy was like, they were talking about work or something about it. And, he was saying, "Don't you do the big camera? You're doing a big camera thing?" He's like, "Yeah, we're doing light." "Oh, do you guys do this camera?" He goes, "No, we do this camera, light. I don't know, whatever the hell it is." He's like, "Oh, cool." He goes, "Yeah, I got a bunch of them. If you want to come by, I'll give you one." He's like, "You kidding me?" It's like, "No, come on by. But if I come to your work, you're gonna let me come to your work someday." He's a surgeon, and they just struck up a friendship. Seems like this is a new character. It doesn't seem like he's going anywhere. Maybe they become friends. I don't know. He seems very nice. He seems an earnest man. He seems an honest man. And there aren't many of those in Mad Men, so I don't know if that's going to be for real or if something bad's going to happen. But this guy's here for a reason. I just don't know what that reason is. Finally, we cut over and see our friend Roger Sterling, who we haven't seen since last week. And he looks a little different. He's got his hair's a little thicker. I've noticed a lot of dudes got the sideburns going now. So he's got little sideburns going. Hair's looks a little less coiffed or a little bigger, a little thicker. And he is in a psychiatrist's office. And his psychiatrist, he's trying to make a laugh. What's funny is it starts when he's talking about women, of course. He's like, oh, none of them are really blonde. Well, maybe because, their hair changes over time, and maybe they're all brunette. Maybe I'm thinking about Jane. He's basically talking about all the women he's been dating and seeing and all these things. But he's also having kind of an existential crisis where he flat out mentions doors. There you go. The doors. Here's your doorway. Here's your first talk of doorways, where he's going on and on about, what's the point? Everything is a door. Like you think everything is a choice. You think, oh, that door, that leads to something. You open the door, guess what it does? It leads to another door. It leads to another bridge. It leads to another wall. It leads to another this. It's just, you're picking up pennies along the way. It means nothing until the end. And you're dead. And he made some funny comments. And he joked, the psychiatrist is like, look, I told you this. I'm not supposed to laugh. Sometimes it's hard. But it was really just about, I think, him having that midlife crisis. He's already gone through 2 wives. I think he's gone through 2 heart attacks. And, he's just worried about changing, worrying about getting older. Probably the LSD did a lot for him, especially the second time, when last time we just saw him standing there naked. But that's our first moment of Roger of the season, is him trying to make a psychiatrist laugh, but also having some pretty heady thoughts about what the hell is the point of any of this. Meanwhile, we jump back to Peggy's office, where she's with that same guy who called the night before, and there's a young guy in the office who, it's funny, this is so different than what the world is now, where the thing on the Tonight Show happened. It happened live, and they can't find any transcript. They don't have any transcript of it. It's not like there's a video of it. I mean, nowadays, most of the stuff that the late shows do are so that they put on YouTube the next day and people watch them that way. But I mean, this isn't even, in the 80s even, you'd be like, oh, it was on tape. It's on this. We can find this. But in the 60s, it's like, it's here and it's gone. They didn't mention who the comedian was. They don't remember who the comedian was. They don't know even if people noticed it. The people who did notice were the people who run the headphones, the headphone guys. They noticed it. That's why they're freaking out about it. So they bring this young guy in to kind of do the routine. And he wasn't doing it great justice, but the guy that was called Peggy, he's laughing at everything. Like, this is funny. And Peggy's like, oh, this is going to be terrible. This is a catastrophe. She's like, the friggin' Tonight Show. And the guy's like, yeah. The older guy, he had a good line. He's like, well, you could probably blame the army too, because they actually did chop off ears. They were court martials. And, it's like, oh, and she's like, you got to call, he kept saying, you got to call this boss, call the boss. The guy who hired her. I don't remember his name. I want to say Ted. Is it Ted? I think Ted. But it's like, Peggy, I'm glad you have a better job. But you're with the wrong people. You're supposed to be getting angry at Stan and Ginsburg. You're supposed to be fighting with Dawn. This is what you're supposed to be doing. And I know this is better for you. You probably have more money, more power. But I want you back where you belong. You're not doing Super Bowl ads for some headphone company. You're supposed to be working on whatever that perfume was, or the Jaguar. You're supposed to be in Jaguar too. Well, actually, I think her not being on Jaguar might have been one of the reasons that she left. One of them. I forget. But guess what we do? We cut back to Dawn in an elevator again. Dawn went through elevator doors with the doctor. Dawn went through elevator doors with this guy. Dawn went through the doorway when the doorman collapsed, and the doorway when he came home. Lots of doorways. I'm probably thinking too much of this. So he's in the elevator with a dude I've never seen before. We've never seen before. But guess what? He works at Sterling Cooper, Draper, whatever their name is. I think, did he say his name was Bob? I think he did. And because, isn't there like a famous quote, not good, Bob, or something like that? And I thought, is this Bob? Is that the Bob? But he has 2 coffees. He's talking to Dawn. He's in accounting, I think, a business area. Upstairs. He's in the upstairs office. I'm like, oh, yes, that's right. They expanded. And he kind of talks with Dawn a little bit, seems to butter him up, has an extra coffee, gives it right to Dawn, and then talks about having college football tickets. I think he's trying to impress Dawn and get him into maybe get him into his good graces to invite him to this game. And Dawn goes into this brand new Sterling Cooper Draper Price, where the first thing I notice is Stan's got more hair, he's smoking some grass, and Ginsburg has a mustache. These are the things that first pointed out to me. I'm like, whoa, this is the late 60s, man. Hippy dippy doopy pie. And they're working with two new people I've never seen before, a woman and a man. I don't know their names. I just know they're product creative, and they're working on oven cleaner. That's what I see so far. Stan's like, did you bring home anything for me so I can work on the Royal Hilton or whatever the hell it is? Don's like, it's an experience. You had to be there. In other words, Don had nothing for them yet. But really, it was just weird seeing this office. I'm like, this is the office. Who are these people? I'm already, Stan and Ginsburg weren't there at the beginning. But they're, I'm used to them now. They are part of Sterling Cooper. Like, hey, there's some friendly faces. Now there's new people. Am I going to be used to them by next season? But that's how work is. Work, you come, you go. There's people that come, there's people that go, and there's new people all the time. Now, Dawn comes in, and Dawn starts walking down the hall and sees Dawn, his secretary Dawn, who she's like, I've moved everything to the afternoon because what's going on here? There's a photographer here. And you know that hallway between Dawn's office and Roger's office? So you have Dawn, the secretary's desk, and Roger's secretary. Now, it's opened up. They ripped open the ceiling. They put a staircase in there. I don't know why I was picturing a spiral staircase, but they demolished. They made a big space area to put this new staircase in, and a photographer's there to take their pictures for, I don't know what it's for, the newspaper, for advertising, for something. And who's up on there posing but Pete Campbell. This is the only time we see Pete pretty much this whole episode. He is very smarmy and, slapbacky, glad-handing, all that stuff. He's like, I'm taking photos. And he's like, Dawn. He's got little sideburns going too. And he's like clapping Dawn on the back. He's like, I never talked to you, blah, blah, blah. And, Roger, it was really kind of small talk. And then Joan goes up to get a camera, and the assistant's like, is this color photo? And the photographer's like, no, I wish it was. And Roger's like, how am I going to follow that? And she has a little smile on her face. Roger and Joan, they belong together in my world. And then, we just see, what's his name shows up? Harry. He shows up. He's not there for the photographs at all. He's just upset because he has to go upstairs. So he moseys upstairs to, buy everyone while they're doing their pictures to get to his office. And when Don finally goes to his office, he opens the door and he's like, what the hell? And Secretary Don is like, I'm sorry, they thought it would look better for the pictures. He's like, well, I don't like it. She's like, we'll change it back right afterwards. So they changed around his office. They moved his desk over by, on a different wall where the couch used to be. All this for photographs. And they moved the couch where the desk was and the desk where the couch was. And you could see he just was not loving it. But he just looks out the window, stares off in a different angle. Interesting. It was another change when he went through a doorway. A doorway. The Twilight Zone. I don't know why I said that. We cut back to Peggy and that dude again, who I recognize the actor. And they're with their client from the headphone company. And Peggy is just smooth talking, this dude. She's like, we didn't hear about anything. There's been no backlash. You probably are the only people worried about it. And the guy's like, we probably are, but we are worried about it. Can't we do this? Can't we just cut this part out? She's like, that will definitely work. But then they're in a toga and it doesn't make any sense. But that's a good starting point. he's like, well, I don't know what to do. And she goes, but I do. I know how to come up with these things. You give me time. Give me a couple days. She just really smoothed it over with this guy. She's such a pro. And the guy's like, okay. And she leaves. And the other guy's like, great. But you still got to get Ted. I think his name is Ted. If it's not Ted, I apologize. You can see Peggy's like, I'm taking care of this. I don't need to freaking bother this guy constantly all the time. He's like, but yeah, you need to call him. So we jump back over to the office and we see the two new people talking to Don about an ad campaign for that oven cleaner where it talks about, love is in the title. And Don has these moments where he's like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless. It makes love seem trivial. And while he's saying this, the doctor is being brought in. The doctor who he said could come visit the office later and get a camera. So the girl from the main desk is bringing the doctor in. The doctor pauses for a second just to hear Don kind of work his magic. And Don says some really great things about love. You got to make it feel this. The difference between this person, this happening, and this happening is like 1,000 volts of electricity, and that's what you need to make it feel like. And you can see the doctor was impressed. And when he came in and Don finally talked to him, he goes, well, you can see this is my hospital, or whatever. He said something like that. And the guy's like, I was impressed with what you did. It bothers me. I thought you were just an empty head. There's something going on there. I think he was impressed by what Don did. And then Don brought him over to the closet, gave him a camera, and that was really it. And then his secretary came over, and for the glimpse moment, I thought, oh no, this guy's going to be a jackass racist. But nope, he was fine. They made a little quip about Don being needed by the photographer, and the doctor was like, oh, maybe I could take a picture. And then he said, I think our wife's going to have something planned for New Year's, try to keep it in the building. Shook hands, went on their way. That was really, it was, this guy who, I don't know who he is, but he seems like he'll be okay. So now we get to Roger's office, and Roger gets some devastating news. First, he's on the phone. Seems like he's talking to another chickie about wanting to be with her. And his secretary comes in, and she is bawling. And Roger's like, what is it? What's going on? Gives her a drink. She's like, you better sit down. He's like, I'll be okay. Roger's mother died. And he starts comforting his secretary, who's just crying because she met her. She's always been nice to her when she could hear her. He goes, she was 91. She'd been talking about she'd been saying it to be her last Christmas for 20 years. She had a good life. How did she die? How did it happen? And she said, she had a stroke in the bathroom. She's like, I'm sorry. He goes, well, I did ask. She said, do you want me to call your aunt back? Because the aunt is who called the secretary. He goes, no, she's a fruitcake. She'll probably want to have a seance. I thought that was a great line. But, he comforted her. They shared a drink. The secretary was crying. He goes, talk to Joan. She'll know what to do. He goes, I guess I need to take care of everything. Why don't you still have Joan do everything? She'll know what to do. She leaves, and Roger takes a sip of his drink, and he just holds it up. He's like, cheers to his mom. So that was nice. And I remember, right, we saw the mother. She was one of the board members really early on. I forget what they were voting for. I don't know if it was to bring Don in to give him more power. Wow, I can't even think of these early seasons where Don didn't have power. He was just part of creative. Wild. So we do get the scene of Peggy calling her boss. Why was this there? Was this there to show us that she couldn't get through to her boss? And why she was calling a church? And that was also trying to figure out what she was doing there. Now, it wasn't a Catholic church, so I don't know if this guy was on a religious retreat of some kind, but the person she talked to was asking her about her religious beliefs. We didn't hear that. We just heard her saying it. She's like, Catholic, my father. And then she said, and with you also, when it ended. But she's like, can you please make sure he gets this message? It's about the Super Bowl ad. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I'm not sure what that was. Maybe he was, again, he could have been on some kind of religious retreat. And she couldn't get through to him. But interesting to see where that leads. And hopefully it's a big fiasco and Peggy has to go back to Sterling Cooper, Draper, something. So the final the final moments of this episode, and I'm telling you, we're stopping now, even though my Netflix has another 45 minutes. We are going to stop because this is the end of episode 1, and you are not going to hear my voice talk about this episode until next Friday. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. It's so weird. But now the final scene of this episode, after Betty gets off the phone, is Don in his office with the photographer. He's got the photographer, then 2 photographer assistants there. And I think his secretary was there as well. I don't remember. And the guy's like, just kind of do your thing. He's like, well, if I did my thing, I'd be standing over there at my desk. He's like, just make it natural. So he's kind of moseying around the office. He lights a cigarette. The guy's like, good. He looks at his lighter, and he realizes he has the lighter of the private that he married, that he helped facilitate the wedding, gave away the bride. So, and he gets this kind of, he goes away. He's lost. He's not in the moment. So I'm thinking to myself, is he thinking this guy has my lighter? And does his lighter say Don Draper? Or does it say Dick Whitman? I don't remember. I don't know if you've ever seen that. I'm sure we have. Was the lighter something that was in the hidden drawer, the locked drawer? I don't remember. I should remember these things. But he gets this kind of look in his face. It wasn't full panic. It was just kind of, or maybe he was just thinking about this kid, and it just brought him back to the moment where this kid is back in the shit, back in Vietnam. Who knows if he's even alive? So I'm not sure if Don was worried about the lighter being mixed or anything. I think he was just more like, he's doing photographs because of choices he made in life, got him here, got him out of the war, and here to living this luxury life, taking photographs for some magazine or something in his great office, where the biggest complaint is they moved the desk, and he's looking down at this lighter, and he's thinking about this kid who got married just so that his girlfriend would be less superstitious or more superstitious, or just feel better about him going back into the war. Maybe this kid never comes back. I don't know. All these thoughts going through my head. It's probably what was going through Don's head at that moment, because he was like, huh? What? He's like, what do you want me to do? And the guy says, just be yourself. And then we fade to black. The just be yourself thing, once again, brings me back to thinking about Dick Whitman. And this kid is at war, and this kid went back to war, and Don traded on the real Don Draper's name to get out of war. So it's like he's a deserter. He's fraud. And this guy's telling him to be yourself. And that's the one thing he isn't. He's reinvented himself. He is not himself. So, another little moment of like, what am I doing and what have I done? And that's where episode 1, The Doorway, part 1, comes to an end. And I think I've covered everything. Mind you, I like this new method of me kind of going through it blindly with my mouse pad, seeing the little thumbnails to remind me of what was going on. So I think I covered everything. But let's kind of go back. Joan, we don't really see anything. Pete, we don't really see anything. Harry, we don't really see anything. Roger, the biggest thing is, he's questioning life, and then all of a sudden, boom, his mother dies. Really, really sad. Henry and Betty, they seem to have taken a friend in of Sally. And Betty really does not know how to talk to her husband. Really, the rape and the put a cloth in her mouth stuff it wasn't funny. It was just crass. Is that the word? Like I don't like to think, I like to think that nothing offends me. Like, I'm not like, oh my God, I can't believe she said that. It's more like, oh my God, I can't believe what is wrong with you? That kind of thing. Like, you are ridiculous and you're a cuckoo bird for saying those things. But it seems like maybe she's going to bond with this girl. I don't know. Wouldn't it be something if something did happen between this girl and Henry? Oh my God. Oh my goodness. The thought of it. Oh, disgusting. Um, Sterling Cooper, like, this office looks so different. Different people, different floors, different looks. We got sideburns now. Megan was a big chunk of the first 10 minutes and then really didn't see her since seeing the doctor. Oh, no, she got her lines. She's in a TV show now. She's doing something. It's not a ton, but something. I feel there's a lot that happened in this episode. I'm glad I'm cutting these into 2 different episodes because a lot happened, even though the first 10 minutes was in Hawaii. The Hawaiian thing, that's going to be a big client, I assume. And then we get Peggy over at her job dealing with her clients, dealing with headphones and Vietnam jokes in the Super Bowl. How exciting. And no matter how good she does, they're still like, you need to get Ted on the phone. You need to get Ted, if his name's Ted. If it's not Ted, I apologize. But I think I covered it. Peggy's still with her boyfriend. I don't know what's going on with Joan. But I don't know what's going on with Pete. A lot of Pete stuff happened last season with that woman, the electroshocks. So we'll see. I think that's done because she didn't even remember him. I think that's done. So Pete either. Oh, I think Pete got his apartment, right? Oh my God, what a nut. So he's probably, who knows? He's living it up. He seemed pretty chipper, a little too chipper. I don't like Pete happy. I prefer him being sad. That's my favorite Pete, the sad one. I think that I can't wait to get up on the second floor. I'm just dying to see what's up there. You know, it seemed like artsy people were on the first floor because somebody said like either it's the photographer or the writers, but it smells like a reefer down here. I think they said reefer. And Stan was definitely looked like he was smoking weed, and no one cared. So I don't know what's going on upstairs, but I can't wait to see it. But Dawn's office and Roger's office are still on the first floor, so it can't be just. But they're part of. Well, they're not creative. Dawn is. Look, I'm rambling now because it is 11:38 p.m. and it is still Friday while I'm saying this, even though it's probably going to be Saturday by the time this episode gets to your ears. But it's here, and we did it. And I want to thank you for listening. I said this before at the beginning, but once again, let me just reiterate. If you're on Twitter, please follow me at MadeManPod. Now, also, you know what would be great is if you would throw me an iTunes review. It's free. Costs you nothing. And all I'd ask is that you give me 5 stars and call me the coolest, most awesomest dude ever. Like, you don't have to quote me, but write that exactly. No, I don't care what you say. And you know what? Be truthful. I don't care if you hate it. If you hate it, go on there and say, this guy sucks. His Henry Francis is awful. But I would love an iTunes review. That would be my Christmas present, even though it's only October. By Christmas, my goodness, we're going to be well into. Am I going to be doing this season by Christmas? And I think it's October. So let's say 2 months from now, that's 8 episodes. It's going to be December. Yeah. This season is going to bring us into 2020, and then boom, it's on to the final season. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it. But you've been with me this long. Please stay with me. I appreciate it oh so much. In fact, I want to thank you. Sometimes I'm like, why do I do this? Not the voice, not the podcast. I do it for you, but the voice. I don't know why I started doing it, but it's part of me now. So I want to thank you for listening to my voice as I ride along that trail on a journey from here to the ultimate goal of being a made man.
Fans not experts.